the financial markets, particularly what's happening on the pound, but also to government borrowing costs, the interest rate the government has to offer investors to borrow money, completely dominating this conference. Keir Starmer's obviously going to take advantage of that today, as his Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves did yesterday, painting the Labour Party as the real party of responsible economic management, very much trying to move into Tory territory, beating them on their home ground. A lot of Conservatives here in Liverpool, a lot of people you read on WhatsApp and talking to them on the phone, there is real concern. There's talk about letters being submitted to Sir Graham Brady challenging Liz Truss's leadership when she's barely got her knees under her desk at Downing Street. The good news for the Conservatives, and particularly Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng this morning, is that the pound does seem to have stabilised overnight. It's at $1.08, which is roughly where it was 48 hours ago before we started talking about a sterling crisis. But that doesn't mean this is over. It may be it may just be the beginning of the end, to quote Churchill, given that a lot of people around the world will be looking to see what the government, what the Treasury, what the Bank of England now says. They're, of course, determined to say nothing at all. They don't want to be seen to be panicking, taking the markets on, and that's why yesterday's statements were rather thin, very little new action. That 23rd of November date that you mentioned there for the Chancellor's next fiscal statement, that was pretty much nailed on anyway. They haven't really brought it forward. And of course, there was no emergency interest rate rise from the Bank of England. But as we can all see, and as the front of the newspapers reflected, in the actual money markets where mortgages are provided, interest rates are soaring. And that's going to be a concern to a lot of homeowners this morning.
You're talking about the international reaction to all of this. The chief economist at Bank of Singapore saying, and being quoted on the FT this morning, it looks like we're headed for a spiral that we would usually see in emerging markets, crises where policymakers struggle to reassert credibility. And then they quote Vasilios Gikianos, Citigroup's EMEA head of foreign exchange, saying the UK is now in the midst of a currency crisis. And as you say, the impact on mortgages with Halifax, I think it is, Virgin Money skipped and all yesterday, blocking new mortgages will be a cause of concern for many people. It will. Look, to be frank, I think there's an awful lot of hyperbole going on here. The chief economists of the big investment banks, they're paid to say things in many senses that help their investment banks. So a lot of big international investors will be what we call short the pound. They'll have placed bets, sophisticated bets in financial markets that turn out to be profitable if the pound actually falls. So we've got to, be slightly careful about giving too much credence to what the city slickers saying. We've got to look at the facts. And what the facts are saying is that the UK's total government debt is actually pretty low by international standards. What the facts are saying is that the tax take has only gone back on Kwasi Kwarteng's estimates so far to where it was a couple of years ago. So it doesn't strike me this is some scorched earth budget. I do think the Tories are being criticised for lowering the top rate of tax. A lot of people found that politically unpalatable. But when it comes to the basic economic facts on the ground of the situation, the Conservatives have got a really strong case for saying that this currency crisis is, slightly overdone. On the other hand, if sterling goes down towards dollar parity, the headlines on the front pages of the newspapers will be even more blood-curdling than this morning.
So it's not a problem unless we have to pay it back, really, is what you're saying, Liam. And I suppose we've now got used to massive borrowing. That's now seen to be the norm.
I think that's right, Eamon. And there's a lot of people of our age saying, back in our day, interest rates went to 15%. And, we managed to get through it, so why are today's young families with mortgages complaining? But that's a mistake, because today's young families are much, much more indebted than our generation was, precisely because house prices are so much higher, so much less affordable in terms of annual earnings. And imagine if you took out a mortgage when the Bank of England's base rate was 0.1%, 0.25%, you took out a 2-year fix, and then next spring you've got a refix, and the Bank of England's base rate is near a 4 or 5%, because that's where the weight of money in the bond markets, in the financial markets, is suggesting the Bank of England will ultimately be forced to raise rates in order to defend the pound.